Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Santana. I'm the Associate Curator here at Print Center, New York. Thank you all for being here tonight on the occasion of Tariku Shiferaw, Maps and Borders, currently on view in the lobby. We're currently sitting in Print Center's New Voices exhibition, which is a group show of emerging artists. After our talk tonight, we'll all congregate in the lobby and we can spend some more time looking at Tariku's works. So just some quick housekeeping notes. The bathrooms are around this corner. There's a little hallway and they're gender-neutral restrooms. If anyone needs an extra chair, please let me or my colleague at the front desk know. As you're walking through the space tonight, please just be careful with Mariana Ramos Ortiz's sand sculpture. It's really fragile and someone almost kicked it the other day and we had a panic attack. So yeah, we've marked it off tonight just in case. We'll be in discussion tonight for about 45 minutes or so, and then followed by an audience Q&A. I'd just like to give some brief thank yous. Thank you to my colleagues Alexa Gross and Blair Goldstein, who assisted with prep for this talk. And I'd like to thank my friends Itzel Alejandra and Felipe Quiros, who are expertly handling videography and sound tonight. Just want to acknowledge the labor of these amazing people who are also excellent artists in their own right and lend their expertise and work collaboratively to make programs like this possible. So I'll introduce today's guest. Tariku Shiferaw is a New York-based artist who explores the concept of mark making to address the physical, social, and political spaces of art and societal constructs. He's exhibited at the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Smithsonian Institution, LACMA, the Baltimore Museum of Art, the Drawing Center, and the California African American Museum, among many other sites. Shiferaw has participated in the Independent Study Program at the Whitney Museum and in open sessions at the Drawing Center. And he has also been an artist in residence at the LES Studio Program, Silver Art Projects, ARCA Athens, Greece, and the Experimental Print Institute residency at Lafayette College. Pedro Barbeito is a visual artist living in Easton, PA. Over the past 25 years, he has exhibited internationally and in 15 solo exhibitions and participated in over 50 group shows. Solo venues include Basilico Fine Arts, Lehman Maupin Gallery, and the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum, among others. His work has been reviewed in the New York Times, Art in America, Art on Paper, The Village Voice, Frieze, and other publications in the US and Europe. And Barbeito is currently Associate Professor of Art and also the Director of the Experimental Printmaking Institute at Lafayette College. So welcome, thank you. So let's jump right in, and where we'll start, I was actually gonna ask you to start by talking about your Mata Samai series, which is what we have on view in the lobby, but if you wanna briefly discuss some of this earlier work that you did with Leslie Dogood at Dogood Press, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thank you for the intro and for having us here. No, I think it's cool to start with history, right? Like, this is the first print that I had ever done. And the print that I did, and the one you see in the lobby with Pedro, is my very second print. So when I made this in collaboration with Leslie Dogood, Dogood Press, she was able to show a lot of her prints and in a group show in the lobby here in 2024, summer 2024, I think. So that's where the relationship sort of began. But about my work engages mark making. As you see this, this print actually is a great example of the works a lot of folks know about my work. Mark making by ways of painting, the history of painting, the discourse of painting. With this series titled One of These Black Boys, it started with just engaging the art historical markings of the surface of a painting, because a lot of abstraction conversations began with the marking of the surface, and for me it was more like, how do I make a mark? How do I mark myself into this history, considering the way I look, where I live, how abstraction is viewed in Western art history, who's shown, who gets to make their mark, who is marked, who's erased. And so then these bars came as a way of just engaging the surface, like surface marking on top of this historical marking, like with painting, with art history. But on top of that, I don't think that was enough. So I started titling each work based on music by the African diaspora as a form of another layer of like invisible marking.
This is Solange.
This Solange, yeah. But even the colors came from just like the development of the work. It used to just be like black and blue, either a black ground with blue bars or blue ground with black bars. So when I got into Matasamai, you could like this series right here. Then I still think about painting as by ways of making a mark through painting, through the history of painting, but also through mythology for this, right? Like where I use mythology as a starting place to think about this imagined night sky. Matasamai, the series, actually means night sky in Amharic, my first language. And so I think about the Matasamai series as this imagined night sky, a place that is alternative to the night sky that, we sort of just live under. Also thinking about how the night sky has this history with humanity, right? Like a place where we imagine our values, imaginations, where we imagine ourselves into the night sky. Some think about, based on their societies, like sheep or arrows or, just different things, right? Like Greek mythology, Roman mythology, engage those ideas, those concepts. So then when I think about the night sky in the current society that we live in, oftentimes through film, books, or any like told stories, we constantly think about Greek mythology and Roman mythology by ways of popular culture. And for me, I believe, like value systems are created through mythology. And so if we're thinking about Greek mythology, which is in a sense considered the civilization of Western society, right? Then where is everybody else? Where are the Dogon people who had studied the night sky for over 5,000 years, longer than any humans? Where's the first people of Australia, also referred to as Aborigines? Where's the the Egyptian Kemet, Black Egypt? Where is Nubian people, the Zulu, the Maasai, we could talk about, the Afro-Cubans, or we could talk about every part, like, the Brazilians, the Afro-Brazilians with the capoeira, with these sounds and with these, mythologies and thought process. So when this one is titled Cosmic Egg, and Cosmic Egg is this thing that it's actually what that form is referred to. You could barely see it, but it's this thing that archaeologists had found in this shape of an egg, which sort of just refers to the Dogon's perspective of like creation theory, or like in like the first, the beginning of like the universe kind of a thing. So with all these symbols inside it. So I thought, it'd be really cool to just start like putting stuff in. If you go to the next one, I think is, the installations.
I actually wanted to just bring up, I love that it's night skies and not night sky. It kind of emphasizes the fact that the sky changes every night. It changes depending on your vantage point, your positionality. And also the painting that's in the lobby is titled Ade Abeba, which is the national flower of Ethiopia. Am I right about that? And the symbol for like the end of the rainy season, the new year. So I just feel like there's so many poetic connections.
Right. So that painting, Ade Abeba, is a yellow flower that grows every year in September for about 2 to 3 weeks. And for thousands of years has symbolized the new year in Ethiopia, or in that region of the world. So before Calendars Day. Whenever people saw that, it was the new year, new beginning. You forget the past, you move on to the future. But I love that you said skies, and you caught that. Not just multiple skies, but also multiple people's skies, right? So like there's this pluralness about like everyone's skies is different, everyone's value systems that are casted into this night sky.
I don't know if you want to talk briefly about
Sure.
this exhibition.
So this installation, I had shown it at Galerie Lelong in 2023, my solo show in September that year. And it's titled A Sign in Space, which is actually a reference to an amazing writer, Italo Calvino, who wrote these like collection of poems in this book called Cosmic Comics. And he writes in this particular story or poem, he talks about this immortal, primordial being who was sort of just like surfing the universe pre like creation or something, or pre-existence of like our worlds, talking about what if I make a sign right here, like and what if I go around the universe real quick, come back to it, probably take me one galactic year being like 200 million years in human time. So this is like sci-fi, right? So it takes him 3 galactic years, which is like 600 million years. And when he comes back, his sign, whatever form that is no longer the form that he left it in. So he's all like, this is not my sign. Like someone tampered with it. Like someone sort of just maybe, the way I looked at it is, you tag a wall, then somebody else sort of just crossed your shit out and put their name on there. Right. And that's how I grew up in LA. So I'm thinking about mark making or making a mark. So then the whole, like the essence of this story is that, how preposterous it is to make a sign in space and then expect it to be there. So I was thinking like, what happens when we're naming constellations, stars, and planets? And if we lived in a different part of the world or a different planet, do we see them as the same thing, the same language, same names? Orion's belt, like what is Orion's belt? Like for a different group of people that don't identify with these like Western mythologies, right? And so that was the whole essence of it. So at the bottom, the sculptures you see, they're ceramic sculptures, about 200 pounds each, around 22 inch cubed, around like knee high. And inside them are like a couple of speakers that with a sound piece you could actually hear in this lobby that pans from one end to the other. It's a 12-minute sound piece that loops. And so I think about mark making, not just in painting, but also in installation art by ways of marking space, like the literal space, the room, but sound could be also a way of like a placeholder or like a marking of a demarcation of space through creating that particular culture or atmosphere or whatever that is. And so when I was making all these paintings on the wall, when I was imagining it, I was imagining like creating this imaginary world, imaginary night sky with these imaginary objects inside it, with sounds that's coming out from within it. And those sounds span the context of this African diasporic sounds like Zulu chants, ancient Zulu chants, Dogon chants, Ethiopian Orthodox worship chants, juxtaposed to with African American fraternities and sororities chanting. And then there's this protest chant from the South Sudan protest like several years back in Arabic. And then there's, like these Haitian tubes that I heard in Central Park that I recorded and I sort of included in there. I had traveled to Brazil that year, so I caught my friend's grandma's neighborhood. They were doing this capoeira just for themselves. There was probably 5 or 6 people. No one was watching them. They're just doing their thing. I recorded that, placed it in there. And so everything is overlapping. There's contemporary city sounds that I live in, like New York train train doors closing or the train leaving or water dripping, coins dropping,
This idea
So
of like
there's-
a sonic constellation that is also mirroring the constellations that are present in all these different media.
Yeah. But also like thinking about like the concept of what does the universe sound like? What does space sound like? And scientists oftentimes think about if there was an atmosphere in space, then space would sound like this humming, like bee sound, like But also, so like there's this like, what is it? Formulation of like what that would sound like online. So I had used that sound online, but I also used like bee sounds to sort of just like juxtapose it next to it, but also the Aborigine tubes that also sound like those bees. So there's this layers of different sounds that sound like each other that mean and point to different like vantage points.
The crates, because it's so interesting to hear you talking about this, because the way I approach art is I enter into the space, the installation, I try to read nothing and have an experience, see where it takes me. And those crates are really interesting to me because they're in fact not functional. You have all these kind of like bars moving through them. And the other thing I noticed was the tops of them are all bowed down, kind of like suggesting a body. And to me, I was thinking of, and because they're so weathered, you can't really locate them in time. It does kind of give you the sense of this like history, this kind of like lost history, like the bodies aren't there, the bodies are missing. And maybe I'm getting this, but this was kind of the experience, and I really like felt it. And then the chain link fence that's on the wall, on the other wall, that's very much kind of like modern form of containment, of separation, right? That's kind of like a border itself. It's a porous border, you can see through it, but it keeps bodies out. So I was thinking when I was looking at these, and the way also that you're kind of mapping, I felt like the paintings in this room were very different from the paintings in the larger space. These are kind of like, it's almost like that painting that we're looking at there on that wall. You're trying to kind of like draw out or map what's behind it, right? You kind of like feel the mapping of the larger space. The other painting, which you did not show, or
Which
maybe
one?
did we see it? The draped piece. Right?
Oh, you mean that one?
Yes, that one.
Okay.
And that I found really interesting because I was thinking of borders also as stretcher bars, as borders that with which we define modernism, with which we define art history, who has been left out, who's been allowed in. And there you do, the beautiful Sam Gilliam move of removing the stretcher. It's kind of like, screw you, you will not see this. Look at this in a new way, right? Look at this through the folds.
Or the warping of this grid that is supposed to be a tool to sort of study the night sky, right? To study the stars, to name them, to own them, maybe.
And within, cosmology, that is in fact probably a truer version of the night sky, because as we now know, light does not, move. I mean, light moves with gravity, right? So,
maybe this is
anyways.
a great place to actually transition
it is.
into how you two met, and also, Pedro, if you could give us all a background as to the Experimental Printmaking Institute. I'm very much interested in the experimentation. I feel like you have a very experimental practice, and you have some images here of some of the artists that have kind of gone through the institution, who I feel like are kind of are heroes of like Black modernism and abstraction in the US. And I feel like Tariku definitely fits into that legacy. So yeah, please share with the audience a little bit about EPI and how you two met and came to collaborate.
Sure. Well, maybe you should speak to how we met, because you met.
Sure. So yeah, I did a residency at Arc Athens in Athens, Greece, from January through March of 2023. And Aristides, the founder and director of that program, also knew Pedro with EPI, and they do collaborative residencies or support each other in their programming and in their vision. So Aristides asked if I'd be interested to potentially work with Pedro, and it was great. And once we met, actually, is where the experiments sort of we met around the time right before my solo show opened. And that's when you went to see this particular installation and this exhibition. Exactly. And that's where we got into all the materials and whatnot.
Full disclosure, by the way, I'm also on the advisory board of ARC Athens, and Aris is one of my oldest friends, not in age, but in the time we've known each other.
Right.
Though he is older than me. But so, yeah, EPI is located on the campus of Lafayette College, and there are all these wonderful Lafayette alumni here. Who, and I also mention them because they, it's a pedagogical kind of space. And so it's a professional shop located on the campus. That's also a place for learning, And my predecessor started EPI in the mid-90s. He was working at Robert Blackburn, another, wonderful institution, printmaking institution here in New York City. And he was working with all these terrific artists. The seed of EPI really comes from Robert Blackburn. The idea of community, of working with, people in all stages of their career, really is derived from there. And I took over in 2017. I have a different background, as you mentioned. I'm an artist. My interests always were how to bring together new and all technologies being painting, oil painting, new technologies being 3D printing. I was 3D printing back in the 1990s. Anyways, so this, and I worked at Two Palms Press. Which,
okay.
Another incredible
Right.
New York institution. I worked there in the late 90s. And so I picked up a lot of kind of moves from there. And when I got to Lafayette, the idea was to bring in these new technologies. Anyways, long story short, donors, nonprofits work with donors and grants. I got this money, I purchased all this equipment. And in fact, Tariku's project is the first project where we could where everything was set to really create a highly experimental work. And that's really how I like to work. I do not like the idea of a piece of paper with an image on top. I like to activate the paper. The paper is part of the print. It's part of the image.
Should we watch some videos of that?
Please.
Of the making,
please,
yeah.
So paper making, right? And you can see.
These are the prints that are in the lobby, which you might have seen as you walked in.
And the white is like the back of it.
That's the
pulp, right? The paper pulp
That's
that
the
was
paper
made
pulp.
around the chain link fence.
So when I went to Tariku's, I was really taken by the chain link fence. There was something about it. It was like a ready-made. It kind of existed in a different kind of space than the rest of the work. And I was staring at it, because it's like really matte, right? The chain link it had this like matte powder coating on it, and it kind of disappeared and moved into the skyscape behind it. And it also did this really interesting thing where it took a turn around the wall.
Oh, yeah, in the installation.
I was like fascinated with that turn around the wall because it kind of like suggested that there was this other space opening up there, right? Maybe a space that we do not understand. I always think of Lucio Fontana and his Concepti Spaziali when I think of that, this impossible space, this poetic space. And so the idea then occurred to me, what if the chain link were inside the paper? And it was kind of like, I didn't quite know what it meant.
I didn't think that was possible, actually. When he said that, I was just like, how? Like, how do you do that? You know?
I didn't know. I didn't know how to do it.
How do you put like metal and paper? You know, like or objects. You know, and so.
Well, the great thing about Tariku, and I think, as far as this like lineage of, like Black abstraction, this history, if we think of like Sam Gilliam, we think of
Even Melvin Edwards. Yeah.
Mel Edwards,
Yeah.
and all the other painters. There was always this kind of like defiance
Jack
of
Whitten.
Jack
who
Whitten, right?
Experiments with all
like,
these.
Yeah, it's like
forms. Yeah.
a break from this like white history, right? Materiality is at the heart of it. And I mentioned these things to Tariku, and Tariku was like on board. It's like, let's do it.
I was just curious, like,
right.
how do you put objects in paper?
Yeah, actually,
Right.
do you think you could break it down for those of us that are unfamiliar with print and with paper making, like step by step, like what was the process of, also from your standpoint, Tariku, communicating ideas and how long from start to finish the whole project took? Just kind of break it down for us.
You're willing to give the sauce away?
I'll give some of it away. But I mean, every project we do is specific to the artist. I visit the work, I talk to the artist, I meet with the artist. I'm not planning to do this again. This is like Tariku's work.
No more chain link fence.
No more chain link fence. Chain link fence, by the way, is like tumbleweed. Like you buy this beautiful roll,
In a
of
big
chain
roll,
link,
yeah.
and you take it back to your
It's
space.
heavy, very heavy.
And you think it's just going to unravel like a carpet, but in fact, it doesn't want to do that. It wants to stay in its rolled state. So, anyways, there was a whole. I flattened it out. I cut it.
Yeah.
It fell apart. So yeah,
Great photo.
that's a picture of me. Yeah, with one of the technologies that I purchased, the hydraulic press. Some of the other prints you saw are like vacuum formed, screen printed, thermoplastic. We're really kind of like pushing the boundaries of what a print can be at EPI. And in this case, just getting the chain link flat, was a feat in itself. And I had to play around with it for days in order to get there. That was Ani Brutus, by the way, there you are. Doing the litho component so there's various components that we're like then bringing together. There's lithography, there's screen printing. I was initially trying to get you to do a monotype, and I still don't know why you didn't want to do that.
We're doing prints.
You wanted to have an edition.
I wanted an edition, and I'm like, he's all like, I can do a perfect, edition with these objects in it. I'm like, I want to see that.
Yeah. So the monotype was in conjunction with these other pieces.
Yeah. But monotype would have meant that like it would have been an individual work. Each work would have been a unique individual work, and I felt like I could make a painting, yeah, and that would be an individual work.
Right.
So.
Right. But that's the beauty of a collaboration. You really you spend time with someone, you figure out what they want, who they are, and how to.
But also having recently, I think we talked about this recently, having seen Leonardo Drew's paste print editions.
Yeah.
With these sculptural works that were editioned like out of 10, out of 20, or out of like X amount of numbers. I thought that was incredible. I had seen it a year prior. And I'm like, how do they make it? And I was online, like, trying to find videos of how they made it. And I'm like, wow, like, you just need to have the tools to replicate, like, a sculptural paperwork that hangs on a wall that is exactly identical from one to the next to the next. And so I'm like, is it even possible? And that's the first time I had seen that. So
yeah,
I was excited to mess around with these. And they took a very long time to dry in between, right? Like it took us about a year and some change to go through this process.
What was that year like, right? Because you weren't physically in Pennsylvania. So how was communication? Like, what was that collaborative process like?
I did the residency for about a week. We worked on it intensely for a week. Some of the students helped, Anna, and once we figured out the imagery, sort of like 80%, then we continued tweaking it. It was, I think I had imagined it a lot darker and you had imagined it a lot lighter. especially the litho, right? So we kept on shipping it between New
So
York
that-
and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that component. So there's the lithography component, then the paper making component. The paper making, I just want to mention, what I do also offer is I custom 3D print mold and decals for each artist in order to make the paper itself more unique, like really to bring agency to the paper as far as whether it's the shape or the density, in this case, how it holds chain link fence. The litho is a photolitho process. I have a fantastic printer. I have to mention Kath Yurkowski, with
Shout out.
who, yeah, I've been working the past 3 years after the pandemic. We closed during the pandemic, and Kath came 3 years ago, and she's just been really incredible, and just additioning, producing these, right? So someone has to make the prints, and it's usually Kath with the assistance of students, depending on the semester. And she, her MFA in printmaking from Ohio University was in lithography, which was a very nice moment because, Tariku's like, I've done a screen print. I don't want to make a screen print.
Yeah, I do not want to do that, no.
You didn't want to make a screen print. And we wanted him, to hand draw. So each layer of this print is hand drawn by Tariku. We did not break down a painting of Tariku's that then was translated into the print. Tariku came in, and for that week, he was painting on acetates. Each acetate, if you look at these, like that print, for example, each color is a plate. Each color is Tariku working, painting
That one, yes.
Yeah, the marks that will then be processed into
So each layer, yeah.
So there ended up being, at one point I lost count because Tariku too, you're so detail oriented. You're the most detail oriented person I've ever.
I learned this too.
Right? He doesn't miss a thing.
Right.
He doesn't miss a thing. So, I would send him something that I thought looked good, and Tariku's like, no.
We went through, so besides the chain link in itself, inside the paper, we also had the chain link pattern that we had done, like 3 layers of it. Some lighter, some darker, some mid-tone. And we just wanted to test it out. I think art is about like experimenting, which is what I loved about your program. To experiment with materials, with thoughts, with ideas, with the moment you said chain link festivals, I was like, oh my God, like I would love to see this. I don't care if it's a fail at the end. I would love to just mess around. Like, so we had like nothing to lose. We're just in there to experiment, to mess around. So we kept on playing around with different layers. I think at some point we're like, should I start all over again? And you're like, please, let's not. I was like almost a year into it. But it was a great collaboration, a great experience for me in doing so.
And for me, it's in fact informed, your attention to detail has made me more detail-oriented in the projects we've done since. But I just want to quickly mention, like, the chain link fence is then also further the print is embossed once the litho is laminated to the ground. It's again embossed with a hydraulic press. So the embossment, if you look at the printout there, of the chain link is kind of like through the illusion, right, of the suggestion of this landscape, of the skyscape. And I thought there's something really interesting happening there, that there was this kind of, within the dimension of the print, if you look at the sides are black, they're a little suggestion of stars to them. So it's this kind of like compression of space, right? And the suggestion of this this border or this, this fencing that's kind of like controlling how we look at the space. I felt it fit for me really well into kind of the content, that you bring.
I was going to ask if you could speak a little bit about the motif of the chain link fence, how it relates to your ideas of maps and borders. And it appeared in your previous installation. It's appearing in these prints. It seems like a repeating motif. So
it's been appearing for much longer than that, actually, those exhibitions. Chain link fence, I think, I'm just thinking about patterns that relate to the grid. Whether you see those sculptures, the ceramic sculptures arranged in this grid-like format on the floor, or the chain link fence, which is a different type of pattern, but like more organic pattern that we're used to, that refers back to the grid again. The idea of this, you had mentioned as this porous border that creates, inside, outside, right? But at the same time, it's a grid is a tool. A grid is something you use to study the night sky, to name the stars, to name the constellations, to create borders on land, to the way, for instance, the way Africa was divided into lands, into countries, was through gridding out, who takes which of the 7 nations get to take or colonize Africa, right? And so there's this idea of gridding, creating borders, and it's like it's a tool. Like if a scientist is using it, it's for a different method. If it's an imperialist using it, it's also a different method. So, so I find the grid to be very interesting.
Can you speak to the fact that it is a ready-made, right? It's not like the representation of chain link, right? So you're actually placing chain link that is in relation to our body, right? Into the work.
A found object, right? Something that is pre-made in society. I think you'll see a lot of found objects, or just objects that are already ready-made, ones that exist in society that also enter my work. Whether it's my first installation with Lalong was a palm tree, sand with painting on the floor, a chain link fence with mylar, silver mylar, semi-reflective, and then these wood pieces that look like a shipping pallet, but that refer to it, and so even the bars and those things sort of just were inspired by partially with these, objects that I had seen in society. I, in the past, have done sculptures or installations with shipping pallets, actual shipping pallets at the drawing center, where I just stacked them up to the ceiling almost, and it did the job. It referred to what I wanted it to refer to in context to with my paintings. And so,
how about? I'm just curious to hear, because I know, Alex, you also had, curated the exhibit here. And I'm kind of interested in the decision of using 3 prints. Like usually when you see, a print show, there's one piece, right? And then there's more, but you just see one. And there's something about the seriality about that, the kind of repetition, almost kind of like a shepherd fairy, like obey sign, where you're kind of it's getting knocked into your head, right? The repetition of that, with the suggestion, the drawn chain link behind it, and then the painting. Can you just speak to the?
Absolutely. That was in conversation with Alex, actually. So there's an edition of 18,
right?
And with 2 APs, 2 PPs, and 1 bat. And so there's 23 of these, pieces, these prints, and Alex and I were trying to figure out, should we have 4? Should we have 6?
We thought about a grid within a grid within a grid.
Yeah. We thought about 1.
Right.
We thought about 2, 3, 4, 6. Those were the numbers that were, even 9, I remember thinking about gridding out the whole thing. But 3 seemed very simple, minimal, and we both sort of just landed at that. It made sense.
It didn't feel right to also just show 1 print. I think because we want to emphasize these prints also in relation to your other work, in relation to the sound, in relation to painting, and to emphasize that seriality that you're talking about.
And we're also doing a solo show with prints, so with 1 print. So how do you hold down a solo show with 1 print? So we were thinking about how do we introduce the series Mata Samai into this lobby, where we can show an example of the work that is currently being made, but also, and then the installation idea came last, which we had to go through.
But it makes so much sense. And when we head over to the lobby, you'll get a sense of spatially, to have the sound component, to have the wall painted, to have this large canvas painting, and then the 3 prints. It really creates a kind of like encompassing environment. I do want to note that we're at 6:55, so if anyone in the audience has any questions for our 2 speakers, we welcome them, and please don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember Pedro, before Tariku came to Lafayette, I remember Pedro telling me, like, he showed me some photos of the show installation. He was like, oh, yeah, he did this great chain link thing, and he's gonna come and we're gonna put chain link in between 2 pieces of paper, and we're gonna print on it. I just want to know, like, how much of it was like Pedro, you coming to Pedro and Pedro being like, you're doing this and you're doing this, or how, like, what was the, like, ratio of, like,
No.
That's a great question, because Pedro came up, he came to see the show, and he was so inspired when we hopped on a phone call, because I wasn't there when you saw the show. When we hopped on a call, he's all like, yo, like, what do you think of this idea? And I'm like, I love it. I don't know how, I didn't fully believe him, actually, if it was possible. So it was a collaboration. And then when I came to see the actual process, then I was just like, wow, like, he did that. Like, he was actually in the process of like getting the wet paper, pulp like into the chain link fence, and just, putting weights on it and trying to, like, I was all like, whoa, that kind of actually looks sexy. So, but I was like, how are you going to print on that?
Yeah.
And in addition to your question, my question was, did you ever encounter, I'm sure we made a lot more than the edition ended up being, but did you ever encounter where when you were pressing it, did the paper rip and then the chain link fence like sort of protrude through, or that happened?
It took some.
I'm sure.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. But no, I mean, I like to pitch these, ideas. It's just kind of like, otherwise, to me, just making an edition of lithos or an edition of screen prints or etchings, it becomes more of a craft, and it becomes more of like just being a facilitator for the artist. I find it kind of boring, to be honest with you. So another huge benefit of EPI is we don't have to sell anything. Like, we do sell prints, but Lafayette College provides us with free rent. We have donors. There are internal grants I can apply for. So it's a huge luxury, and and not to take anything away from other print shops, because I realize they need to survive through selling work. But we have this benefit. So I'm like, why am I going to do this kind of, boring but technical kind of work when, we could really just like lose ourselves. And again, it is a teaching shop. So I feel like seeing the artist struggle, seeing me struggle, is like a learning experience like no other, especially for students. And we go through all kinds of emotions when we're doing
Well, the
this.
exciting part about it is that, I mean, we didn't tell each other like, this is what I'm doing, this what I'm doing. It became a collaboration, but beyond the material too, I think, which we didn't hit up on, is the whole concept of like pushing the envelope, right? Like, what is art? What is print? What is what is painting? What is work on paper versus other materials? And playing with the medium and playing with the whole concept of art making. Thinking about like, so we were nerding out on that conversation a lot, like actually throughout the entire
Your
week.
work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, providing materials with agency is, like one of the shifts from, like Western painting, right? Is like thinking about the materiality, not taking the canvas for granted, not taking the material, the oil paint for granted. And so, and like having seen his show, I was like, what, they're crates. No, they're not wood. They're made out of clay. And, and there's paint on, there was such a playfulness with the materiality that I kind of knew. I was like, we think this, we kind of think the same. And that I think really, collaborations always, you need two people who kind of like each other. Otherwise, you end up in tears.
Right.
Actually.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, please.
Your work is fantastic.
Hey, thank
And
you.
it's so playful and a nice integration of experimentation. I was just wondering, did this mark kind of a pivot from your traditional way of making work, since this is kind of object meets painting?
So like throughout like the last two series, this one and one of these black boys, I've always added like other materials. I've embedded like wood inside of like vinyl stretched on wood stretchers. I've added mylar. I've actually painted the painting all like from the backside, so you can see there's nothing in the front, and people are wondering how that is made. It looked very much either machine fabricated or so pristine. It felt like what's that material? It escapes my mind. But so I've messed around with so many different like materials. I've also used like these Home Depot paint tarps, like these plastic, where I would stretch them, layers and layers of them, and paint on each layer. And then I've also messed around with chiffons, poly chiffons, silk, again mylar, and I'll include paint in there. So there's this materiality that I have a history of this, like playing around with materialities, like different things. Whether it's installations, as you see. I wish I had examples of that in here, but
We do have some videos looping in the lobby where you can see an installation that Tariku did at Smack Melon, and just to get a sense of other projects that he's worked on. Yeah. Yeah, you have a question?
Throughout this conversation, so there's an emphasis on layering. So whether that be the layering of sound to the layering of materials, my question for you is, how does having the channeling within the piece, like embedded within the paper, activate the piece or activate your experience?
That's a great question, and complex, I would say. I don't know. I never thought about how it activated my experience, but I think it definitely activated the piece in a visual way. I think art making is we all forget sometimes that art making first starts with the visual. Like if you make art, it's visual art. It's a reference to the visual that then pulls you into the different concepts, the layers of concepts. So then to play around with both layers of material and concepts is always like a fun thing. I think art, even the way I entered like art making is like the fun ways of like how I can create something, the accidents, right? The things that we totally don't expect to happen, and then it happens, and so that's like the layering happened in ways of just playing around. Even like the layering of like the night sky paintings, the Matsusamai paintings, they're pretty bright underneath, super bright yellow, blue, purples, like mixture of like different colors turning into a third color. And then they get layered with this Payne's gray, very translucent. I mixed the Payne's gray with fluid matte medium, where it thins out to a certain extent, so you can see through it, like almost like seeing through a window or a glass, but very muted colors all of a sudden. So then this gives you the notion of like a dark painting or a night sky or whatever that is, So layering plays a lot of different roles in my work, whether it's materially, physically, or conceptually.
I think we probably have time for one more question, and then we'll all hang out in the lobby. You're welcome to stay and hang out. Anyone else? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just asked for both of you, what was the most difficult process in creating the prints for both sides?
Being patient, very patient. Like, Pedro, not that, not that motion, or like not that moment. So like, I think patience is definitely a virtue in this case, where you know that you're there to create something collaboratively. So you have to be patient with one another because also with the material, it doesn't come out the way you want it to be, like the paint, because lithography is oil-based, right? So to think about lithography, this oil-based, like paint, it's like it doesn't come out this time, then we have to start all over again on a different paper, on a different. So we must have done nearly 100 or whatever that is, or 80 or 70, whatever the numbers are. But he's shipped, him and Kat has shipped so many shipments of different prints, proofs that I have at home right now, all right and wrong, and right in 3 different proofs, and then it's wrong in certain areas. So each of them have a component of something I liked, and then a component of something that I did not like. So talking through that, taking photos of that and sending him, numbering them or alphabetically ordering them, A, B, C. Do you like A, B, or C? I'm like, I don't like any of them, but I do like components of each of them,
I mean, I love that, that it took a long time, because I think in the end we ended up with something really, really special. Like all of Tariku's, I believe, and if it's easy, it's not going to be interesting. It's going to be something that's familiar. The best work always comes from these kind of really tense, difficult moments. And so I was happy that I was so glad that you're not, you're like the nicest person too. So you're saying it well. There's a really nice approach to Tariku, how he delivers the negative kind of response. But I think the problem was really that we didn't have enough time. The residency itself, it's 5 really intense days. I mean, we're working morning to night, eating all our meals together. He goes to his hotel, morning, I'm there. I'm like, hey, Tariq, and we, we're like family for those 5 days. And because, we didn't necessarily, agree on every little thing, we didn't do enough, before he left. So then all of a sudden it's the phone call, and I'm calling Tariku, and there's no answer. And then a week passes, 2 weeks. And then I get an email, I'm traveling.
Oh yeah.
Or this. And of course I'm fearing oh, he lost interest. This is
It would 3 weeks would go by before I get back to him, because I'm not in New York for 3 weeks, and you had shipped them to my apartment and it's sitting there in the lobby. So I'm trying to get to it, open it up, photograph it, and then stay sort of look at it and not respond for 3 days so that I could sit with it, because I could immediately say, oh, they're good, we could just move on. But then again, I'll be unhappy later. So I would give myself 3 days to think about it, to continue looking at it. Sometimes I would take them to my studio, look at them as I'm painting. It was the details of it.
And we had, received these JPEGs with scribbles.
Wow.
Not, the scribble means that, numbered, and it was your sign systems.
Oh, yeah. So I would write on my phone, how you could just edit, write with these little red markers or whatever. But also engaging art making so art making is this solo journey in most cases, right? And I think a lot of you artists in this group could understand that you get to do what you want to do with your art, how you want to make it. And when you're not satisfied with it, you probably won't know it until a month or 2 later. You're oh, I no longer like this piece, and you could change it, and you don't have to discuss that or with somebody else or try to figure that out. But collaborating, especially on a print, then it becomes this thing where you're thinking about, okay, cool, I no longer like that. Can we, I even said, can we start over? And I remember he's all please don't make me start over. So
I was if you have another year or two.
Right. It took a long time. So we did the residency November 2023, and we finally signed this thing in April of 2025. So it was quite a long journey. But I also love the whole concept of I just don't think making a print for the sake of making a print is necessary for me, at least for my practice, and that's why this is my very second print I've done in my entire career. because I just think that like the work needs to make sense. My paintings make sense to me. My paintings engage this concept of making a mark through the medium, also, but also through societal constructs like what we're dealing with. But in making a print, like, is it just like feeding the market? Like, that's not what I want. So I wanted to make I wanted the work to be about making an art piece that also engages not only the concepts, the ideas, but also the whole notion of like, how do we expand in this conversation, in this span of like, just, you know, like art making and having it mean something outside of just like the market, you know?
I think on that beautiful note of expansion, I invite you all to hang out with us in the lobby, experience these works in person. Y'all are going to hang out, so if people have additional questions, maybe you can pull Tariku or Pedro aside and ask those burning thoughts. But thank you all so much for being here.